Story recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain an action, sci-fi thriller film called The Colony. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. Global warming pushed the climate to the extremes, causing harsh icy winds and snow to cover the world. The remaining humans survive in underground bunkers that shield them from the rigid environment above. In one of the bunkers, two people speed through the tunnels, chased by an unseen threat. They reach the door at the end, begging to be let in as danger approaches. Sam, a resident of Colony 7, repairs the weather machines when he witnesses the soldiers drag an old, sick man named Hal outside. Hal's disease is getting worse, and the colony can no longer afford to waste resources on him and risk an outbreak. Even the simple common cold threatens the colony, with the last flu outbreak taking the lives of 20 people in less than a week. To prevent this, the colony puts anyone showing symptoms into quarantine. If their conditions don't improve, they can choose to leave the colony or take a bullet. Hal chooses to take his chances on the outside world, but one of the soldiers, Mason, can't take the risk of Hal returning. Sam's bargains for Hal's life fall on deaf ears, and Hal is shot on the back. When Sam first arrived at Colony 7, hundreds of residents worked together to maintain life underground. They survived the Great Famine brought by climate change. Despite the years of snow-covered lands, there are still some who believe paradise exists somewhere above ground. But other than the cold that freezes the planet, other humans also threaten the survivors. Thinking that Mason may also be a threat, Sam raises his concern to the colony leader, Briggs. The news that Mason refused to allow Hal the choice to be exiled worries Briggs, but more pressing matters must be tended to first. Communications Officer Cooper lost contact with Colony 5 after receiving an SOS from them. Briggs calls in for a general assembly to discuss the matter and directs Sam to assist the livestock. Before the assembly, Briggs confronts Mason on his refusal to honor Hal's choice. But Mason insists on preventing the risk of the sick returning to the colony and endangering the rest. In the livestock section, Victor explains that their only female rabbit only gives birth to stillborns, possibly due to lack of protein. To address this, Sam asks for soy pellets from his girlfriend, Kai. As she's gathering the supplies, Sam notices her laptop showing satellite footage from Spain. Kai monitors any satellite feed she can detect, believing that someone is still fixing the climate. At the main hall where the residents gather for the assembly, Dex reminds his wife, Elena, not to cough. Sam notices their anxious faces and suggests for them to return to their rooms. But it's too late. Briggs arrives to start the meeting. He announces losing communication with Colony 5 after receiving the distress signal. Briggs intends to investigate, but Mason argues that they don't have the resources to spare. Briggs, however, is adamant in honoring their pact with Colony 5. He calls on Dex to join his mission, but Sam volunteers, sparing him from leaving his wife. Victor's son, Graydon, also volunteers despite his parents' concerns. Kai is put in charge of the colony in Briggs' absence, angering Mason. The assembly is interrupted when Elena sneezes and coughs. Fearing the flu, the rest of the people evacuate the hall, and Dex and Elena are quarantined. Mason argues about quarantine protocols and Kai's authority, but Briggs reminds him who the colony leader is. That evening, Sam wakes up to a nightmare where he finds his mother frozen to death in the storm. Years after his mother's death, he still feels guilty over her demise. The next day, as the team makes their way to Colony 5, Sam remembers the start of climate change. The planet grew hotter at first, and the world built weather modification towers to curb climate change. One day, it started to snow everywhere and hasn't stopped for years. Garbed in thick coats and gear, the three men navigate in the icy wasteland, passing by the ghost of a city that once buzzed with life. They reach a weather tower, covered in snow and icicles, presumably never to run again. The three battle their way against the harsh environment for hours, hindered by a broken bridge that groans against the wind. They carefully navigate around holes in the concrete and find themselves on a narrow path that's on the brink of collapsing. At the end of the bridge, they spot a dead man leaning against an army truck. Briggs picks up a gun from the man's hand and checks inside the truck, finding the man's wife and daughter with bullet holes on their foreheads. The team presses on. Walking over thick snow that buries old cities, they reach an abandoned helicopter and take shelter inside. Briggs radios back to Colony 7, where Cooper reports Dex and Elena's worsened conditions. Knowing Mason's brashness, Briggs gives Cooper authority to use force should he step out of line. While they're resting, Briggs brings up how close they are to where Sam was rescued. Before reaching Colony 7, Sam and his family took shelter in an old mine with other families. Eventually, their supplies ran out, leaving them to feed on the horses and dogs. Sam's father brought a team out to search for help, but they never returned. Seeing no hope, Sam took his mother and sister out of the mine, but the storm separated him from them. It was the last time he saw his family. The next day, the team arrives at Colony 5, seeing it barren with a trail of blood next to a gaping hole on the smokestack. They climb down the bunker and see more blood on the floor, no people in sight. Sensing danger, they arm themselves with guns before moving forward. The bunker is damp and dark, only their footsteps and dripping water echoing inside. Briggs sees a dead body covered in a bag in one of the rooms, blood smeared all over the wall inside. With no signs of life, Graydon fears that everyone in the colony is dead. His thoughts are disproved quickly when they hear knocking from afar. More bloodstains mark the walls as they reach the battered door where the sound came from. After Sam picks the lock, Briggs cautiously opens the door, gun in hand. Inside is a man on the floor, covered in a blanket. Blinded by the lights they carry, the man panics and waves a metal rod to drive them away. Outnumbered, he holds up his hand in surrender, begging for his life. As he realizes that they're not the ones he fears, the man warns them to lock the doors. The man, Leland, eats and drinks Sam's supplies as he tells his story. After fixing a new antenna, Colony 5 reached transmission farther than they had before. One transmission shows a man who claims to have modified a weather tower and successfully thought an area stretching to a 3-mile radius. Before the man shares his location, the transmission cuts off. Colony 5 sent a team to locate the source, but they failed. Instead, another group found their team and followed them back to the colony. Leland fears whoever is out there, choosing to be imprisoned in the room than to take his chances outside. Sam assures him that no one else is in the bunker, and they only found him due to his knocking. But Leland didn't do it. Someone else is in the bunker. Confident that they can return home, Briggs orders his team to prepare to leave. Graydon calls Colony 7 for updates while Sam and Briggs search the room for resources. Leland continues to weep in the dark, frightened of what lies ahead. After several attempts, Graydon's radio fails to contact Colony 7 as they're too far underground to reach a signal. Before they leave, voices roar from afar. More sounds of activity echo in the bunker. Briggs' team leaves the room, but Leland pushes Graydon out and locks himself back inside. With no choice, they abandon Leland and move on. Carefully, the team follows the sounds of choked screams and thumps. They hear the sound of metal chains, discovering a room filled with severed human limbs carved out by the cannibal group that infiltrated Colony 5. Among the bloody carcass, a hand moves, its owner clinging to life in the mess. The butcher stops and notices the team. He aims to attack until Sam shoots him down. The gunshot alerts the other cannibals, who awaken and chase after the team. Briggs lights a stick of dynamite and blows up the group chasing after them. Having run ahead of them, Graydon is separated from the two and gets ambushed. The cannibals stab him repeatedly before Sam and Briggs come to his aid. Sam shoots the men down but is tackled by another, who pins him down. Briggs fights off another cannibal with an ice axe and pulls off the man trapping Sam. He swings his ice axe at them until all their assailants are dead. The two check on Graydon, but he has succumbed to his wounds. Hearing a war cry from afar, Briggs and Sam run back to the smokestack where they climbed in from. Sam shoots at the cannibals, but he runs out of bullets. While Sam climbs up the ladder, Briggs breaks down the lower ladder to prevent their pursuers from coming after them. He gets attacked by another man and gets beaten before he could reach his gun and shoot. The rest of the cannibals find Briggs staring up at him in a fury. The leader lets out an angered roar as he watches them escape. Reaching the ground above, Briggs lights dynamite and throws it back inside the bunker. The smokestack explodes and collapses in itself. Believing the cannibals are trapped underground, Briggs and Sam make their way back home. The two take shelter back in the helicopter, where they discuss the recent events. Before global warming, Briggs was an army captain on a relief effort. He witnessed how people go feral out of desperation, akin to how the people who destroyed Colony 5 turned to cannibalism. 20,000 people gathered in the stadium to receive food and medicine from the relief effort. But when supplies ran out, armed people stole the supplies from those who couldn't defend themselves. When the supplies were still not enough, the armed people gathered others for execution, trimming down the population enough to feed those left alive. Briggs' squad attempted to stop the chaos, but they were powerless. Hoping for a better future, Briggs and Sam agree to search for the location where the land has been thawed. In the morning, Sam spots the cannibal group that follow their footprints. Upon reaching the bridge, Briggs and Sam jump over the massive hole in the middle, shaking the bridge momentarily. With the cannibals near, Briggs lights a stick of dynamite, but the wind blows out the fuse. Sam stops Briggs from going back to it, but he knocks Sam down, fighting to start a fire as the cannibals get near. He finally lights the dynamite but doesn't throw it. Instead, he battles with the cannibals until the dynamite triggers in his hand, blowing up the bridge between Sam and the surviving cannibals. With the bridge broken, the leader snarls at Sam as he gets up and leaves. Now alone, Sam heads back to Colony 7. Freezing, distraught, and exhausted, he finally reaches the colony where Mason executes Elena in front of Dex without testing her for the disease first. Kai emerges, raising her gun at Mason. Tired of the flawed protocols, Mason declares his intentions on changing things for their survival. Their confrontation ends when they hear Sam's call for help. The distraction allows Dex to escape. Kai runs to Sam but is knocked unconscious by Mason. Later that day, Sam wakes up surrounded by the colony. Victor asks for his son and weeps when Sam confirms that Graydon and Briggs are dead. Mason arrives, cuffing Sam to the bed. He declares his rules, cutting everyone's rations in half and imposing tests on anyone who shows sickness symptoms. Sam warns them about the cannibals who slaughtered everyone in Colony 5. He asks Mason to evacuate everyone to the thawed land, assuring them that he knows the location. But Mason doesn't believe him. When the rest is gone, a little boy named Rowan gives Sam the stolen key to his handcuffs. Outside, Victor and Mason check for signs of the cannibals. They check the surveillance monitors but don't find anything. A man reports Sam's escape, and Mason heads off to find him. After getting free, Sam rescues Kai and shows her the thawed land from the satellite images on her computer. Confirming the land's location, Sam gathers their supply of seeds and rushes to get as many people as they can to evacuate the colony. Mason blocks their path, asserting his authority over them. Loud thumps overhead alarm the group, ending the argument. They rush back to the surveillance monitors and see the cannibals prying open their doors. The leader presents Dex's severed head to the camera before breaking the device. Realizing that Sam had been telling the truth, Mason orders everyone to arm themselves while the rest who can't fight are secured in the vault. Cooper assists the women and children to the vault, prepared to fight if the cannibals reach them. At the entrance, the non-disabled survivors prepare for battle. The lights start to flicker as the cannibals find other ways to infiltrate the bunker. Cooper fights off a cannibal from the vault but is overpowered. The women lock the vault, preventing the attacker from reaching them. Another cannibal corners a woman at their church. Her screams echo all around, alarming the others. The cannibals enter from the vents, stabbing Mason in the stomach. As more cannibals arrive, the injured Mason flees with fear in his eyes. Kai and Sam back away as they get outnumbered. Victor stays, refusing to back down from the people who killed his son. After a valiant battle, Victor is sliced across the stomach, defeated by the leader. Mason reaches the main hall and immediately barricades the door, preventing Sam and Kai from entering. A woman knocks Mason out and opens the door just as a cannibal tackles Sam. Kai shoots the cannibal on the back, saving him. More cannibals rush to the door, but Mason barricades it again before they could reach them. With the cannibals breaking the door, Sam pries the vents open to escape to the surface. Mason refuses to go, believing that they could still fight the cannibals. The rest of the survivors follow Sam instead, leaving Mason to fight by himself. Before he leaves, Sam tosses his gun to Mason, who aims it back at him. Sam reminds him that he'd need all the bullets to fight before disappearing into the vent. With no one on his side, Mason faces the cannibals. As his final action, Mason shoots a nearby gas tank, filling the main hall with flames that burn him and the cannibals alive. The cannibal leader jumps into the vent before the flames erupt, allowing him to chase after Sam. Inside the cramped vent, Sam dives forward, blocking the cannibal leader from the rest. The leader throws Sam to the side, causing the vent to break open, spilling them into the burning livestock room. Sam uses numerous cages to fend off the man, but he is grabbed and thrown down. Weakened, Sam is knocked to the ground, then on a table where the leader slams his fist against his chest. Baring his sharpened teeth, the leader tells Sam he wants more. Sam finds a broken metal sheet as he's dragged down and drives it into the man's leg. With him down, Sam grabs a pipe and releases all his anger and fear on the cannibal's head, feeling the fury take him over. Seeing the man unmoving, Sam turns his back but is grabbed on the leg. Sam drives a blade into the cannibal's mouth, pushing down until he breaks his head in half, finally ending the battle. Outside, the remaining survivor watches their home enveloped in smoke. Sam finally joins them, seeing the confusion and misery in the others' faces. Sam leads the survivors to the thought area with his purpose set, carrying the seeds to start their paradise. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.